Welcome everyone on our second webinar, a practical approach to React Native optimization for SMEs and enterprises. Today, we are going to show you a real case study and performance audit report. We're going to take you through 5 different sections of this webinar. First of all, Krzysztof will tell you about the benefits of app performance in the challenging times. I'm going to touch on 5 different metrics that you need to track in order for your React Native app to be performant. Then we're going to show you a real life case study for e-commerce healthcare application. In the 4th section, we're going to talk about, we're going to walk you through the performance report. And at the last section, we're going to take you to the slido.com to answer some of your questions. During the whole webinar, please do not hesitate. Please go to the slido.com, enter this code or scan the QR code that you see right now. I'm going to wait. And I'm in a minute, in 30 seconds, I'm going to show you how the slido.com site looks like. Please enter your name and then ask as many questions as you want us to answer. And please vote on each other questions so we know which ones are the most important to you. So the slido.com looks like this. Ask there are no questions yet. Ask the question. So I'm going to ask test question with the question mark, and I'm going to send it. So if you like my test question, you can upvote it and we will answer this test question in our 5th section of our webinar. So upvoting goes like, thank you. Thanks so much. I'm quite popular. Okay. This webinar is presented by Callstack, and I'm an employee at Callstack. I do webinar hosting, and I do also a software engineering. With me are my 2 developer colleagues, Adam and Edu. Hey, guys.
Hey, how's it going?
And Krzysztof Pawlak, who is actually our head of business development. And like we said, he's going to translate the meaty technology into business perspective, into achieving business goals.
I hope Adam and Łukasz and Edu will help me a bit, but welcome everyone. I'm really pleased to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you. So I think we can jump into the first section, the benefits of performant application in challenging times. Krzysztof, take it away.
Yeah, so I wanted to start with why we are all even here. And I think the answer is all about performance. So as Max Nierenberg from Comet Company framed it, in today, like challenging market downturns and all this dynamic situation, it's nothing important than to do more with less. And it's basically what the whole optimization, performance optimization is about. It helps you to make more out of your business in the current situation of your current app, of your current features. And let's take a look maybe at some examples how it has real business impact in practice. So as for Amazon, 1 second of lag in load of their store would cost them 1.6 billion a year. Or on the other hand, like Google, extra half a second in how fast they search result load would decrease the traffic by 20%. And it applies to all big players, but it also applies to all of your companies, all of your products. And that's we are here today to talk exactly about it, how you can improve your business, how you can improve your product and app with performance optimization. And to do so, we'll look into how you can do it with React Native. Callstack is all about React and React Native. And behind this performance of your app, there usually is a technology, and we'll look into how we can work on the technology in order to improve business. So now maybe Łukasz, on to you to the quick recap of what we are even tracking on.
Yeah, so down to technology, we have 5 different performance metrics that you should start tracking in your application and that we here at Callstack try to improve on. There are more than 5 usually, but those 5 are really crucial. And those 5 will come in handy with the next part of this webinar when we're gonna touch the real life examples and we're gonna bridge them to those 5 metrics. So what are there? The first one is FPS. So basically how many times your app UI can be redrawn in 1 second. The TTI, time to interactive, how easy, how fast you can interact with your application. The app size, how much your app weighs when you download it from Google Play Store or App Store. And memory usage and CPU usage, how much your app is heavy on the resources, how much resources does your app consume. So those 5 metrics, again, we're going to touch on later in the webinar. And those 5 metrics you can also find in our performance optimization guide, the ultimate guide to React Native performance optimization. Now I want to give voice to Adam, who is going to tell us about real life case study for e-commerce healthcare application. Adam, take it away.
I think before we move to Adam, I might want to give like a quick background of what we'll be talking about. So we'll be talking about the real life example of how business can be improved with technology solution, with technology performance optimization. But I think it's worth to mention beforehand about what was the client background. So we'll be talking about a healthcare e-commerce company operating globally with the mission to promote global healthcare and wellness solutions with quite a huge number of monthly orders. So it also tells us that with each of the improvements they can save a lot. And what is also important, they were operating in very competitive market. So it was really important to them to actually be ahead of their competition. And what they came to us with, what brought them to actually even investigate that, they saw increase of negative users reviews. So average rating on App Store and Play Store dropped from 4.4 to 3.8. And I think you all might realize how significant drop it was. They also saw an increasing cost of customer success support because the number of complaints quickly started to grow. And also they started seeing those negative results in their business. So meaning that the clients stayed with them for less than they used to. And the business term for that is customer lifetime value. So how long they are staying with their app. And whatever they did to actually reach to new customers, new audience, was prone to pure success because of their already observed performance. So we want to help them, and we started with some investigation on what actually we can work with, and we saw that most of the users operated on low-end Android devices. That is important information because you optimize the app different way. When you are targeting high-end devices, you're optimizing it a bit different way. When you know your customer base is mostly on this low-end mobile phones. When you started interacting with the app, it turned out to be a bit slow. It took a while for it to even load in the first place. And it was also the most major functionality for the app to place an order within the product was taking a good while. And on top of everything, the app size was big. So with limited memory of low-end devices, you could also see that they had to either uninstall it or just struggle to download it. So now onto Adam, about how it translates to the exact metrics that we could technically work with and what we did with them.
Yeah. So what Chris talked about previously is like the feeling of the users, right? The user experience, but it was like unmeasurable for our customer. So first, what we did was to do actual measuring, right? We had to measure, we had to observe, we had to write down what's going on within the application. We had to measure the key metrics that Łukasz mentioned before. So this is our finding. These were our findings. So in an extreme situation, whenever you had list in the application, the scrolling, the frames per second in the screen that contains a list dropped to 40, and 40 frames per second in the application is not very good. If anyone is a gamer, if anyone from you is a gamer, you know that the 40 FPS is a lag basically, and it's a no-go. So we had to improve that. The loading screen is a very good metric as well. So time to first interaction. It means that whenever you go to a new screen, this is the time that the screen is, you can interact with the screen, either click something, either do a scrolling, any interaction basically that you can go. And 90 per second for extreme situation was a very bad score as well. Then we had another metric that user complained about. It was a time to place an order or schedule an appointment. So whenever user tapped the button, they needed to see an immediate response. They needed to see immediate reaction from the app. And in our case, like the application, we're doing a lot of communication with the back and forth, some operation and some unneeded operation, and the total time from a point that the user tapped the application, tapped the button, to a confirmation took 6.5 seconds. So that wasn't a good score. And then we had a final metric, so the startup of the application and the app size that we measured as well and investigated. And as you can see, those numbers are not quite nice as well. So moving on, and the first thing that we mentioned, the list, because probably all of your React Native applications contains some kind of a list, either a simple one like with just some text, etc., or maybe more complicated ones. Optimizing all of them requires like key points. So most importantly, right now we are using flash list whenever necessary and whenever possible. This is the most performant solution on the market currently. Then when using flash list, when using any list or any complicated screens and components, you have to memorize what's needed to memorize. Bear in mind, you don't have to memorize everything. This would be a waste of time, but you have to memorize with a like deep thinking about it. And finally, last but not least, there comes networking and state management. So those were the issues that we had to tackle and had to think about as well. Because as you can see on the next slide, if networking and state management done poorly, it can translate to a long list loading time. So there are a couple of solutions that you can go with here. Łukasz, can we see another slide?
No, actually, when I look at this slide, I have a flashback to something that I read recently, which is the Ultimate Guide to React Native Optimization. And those sections are like the exact translation of something that you can read there, how to handle your list, how to handle your networking, how to handle your state management. And actually this picture right here is taken directly from this guide. So I encourage you to start using the guide and try to optimize your app. You can find a lot of tips and tricks in that guide to help you out with this. So like sorry, Adam, I just thought that this is a good point to bring this up. You can continue.
Yeah, that's nice pitch there. Very nice. So moving on, as I mentioned before, like good networking and a good state management can translate to a time to interaction. So what you can do is like properly manage your state. Don't put gazillions of lines of data into your local state. You don't need that. You just need like slices of that. Whenever it comes to a fetching, you don't have to fetch all the data from the backend. You don't have to drop all those tables from SQL databases to your application. You don't need that either. And whenever you fetch the information from backend, you can cache it and use it later. You don't have to duplicate the network request. All that would mean less operations for the React Native application to do, right? Remember, the users care about what they see on the screen. They don't care about those operations that you perform. So whenever it's like good, it's good to think about that and plan ahead and have a good architecture. Next issues that the users had, and it was like directly impacting the business side of the operation, was a long time to place an order. So some of the issues there were not directly React Native related. Some of the issues were related to like a backend graph, databases, etc., that we maybe not always have can influence. But what we can do definitely is to simplify the background operations. You can do some background operation and not block user, right? Do not block user interface if you are performing something in the background. We can prefetch some data. So whenever user go to a shopping list, you can prefetch the prices. You can prefetch necessary data to use later on. And ultimately, a good solution to use is to use GraphQL. This can speed up your networking and speed up also your local state and basically networking state management as well. So those are the tips as far as it comes to this topic. And as it comes to a startup time, so this is the time that we can measure from whenever the user taps the application icon on a phone, on a desktop, to the time when the user is interactive. The application is interactive. So in our case, the home screen was quite chunky, quite large. It contained a lot of information at the beginning. So what we did was to use the lazy tabs, so you don't have to render and use all the information at once. You can defer the fetching to the later point as well. The navigation structure of the application is also quite important. Sometimes same goes for major users flows. Also, you don't have to have super large and clunky components on a home screen. Having all those spinners, all those shimmers and skeleton loading parts is not always a good case as well, because as I mentioned, the users can feel blocked by those, and sometimes it's simple, and sometimes simple solutions are better for the users at least. And as far as it goes to the application size, we found out that the translations that the user had in their applications were taking very large part of the application size. So you can imagine if the application goes with the 50 different languages, you don't have to pack those 50 languages into your application, right? Users won't use 49 of them at least. So you can fetch the preferred language at the start, and users don't care about the other ones. So that's a very nice solution to go with. There's also an option to go with the mini app approach. So using Repack, it's kind of similar to Webpack solution on a web. You can split the code base into separate chunks and download them whenever necessary, whenever user needs them. And this can decrease the application size significantly, as you probably will see in the next slide.
Yeah, and like a smart way to use that is similar to translation, to provide only what user needs. For example, some features that are common for like two types of the users, or the ones that you need at the very beginning of the user journey. So that's where it comes in handy, and it significantly decreased the app size. And so thank you, Adam, for explaining that. And now I think everyone here is wondering where we eventually get with this those metrics. So yeah, let's see.
Here we have it. Yeah. So the initial metrics is those are that you already see that we discussed before. And we can see the final metrics. So as far as the list goes, we came up to 60 frames per second. So this is the most that the user eye can see. So that's the perfect score, in my opinion. When we can speak about the loading screen time, the TTI, it came down to 4 seconds. And most of this time wasn't dependent on us. It was like time to fetch the data, time to like transform the data, but mostly the network request was taking so long. It could be significantly even more decreased when the backend optimization were in place. Then we had the time to place an order. We significantly decreased this as well, and it's worth stress out that those 2 seconds may not even be the time for a backend operation to be completed, but this should be the time that the application is still usable for the users, right? So we can show the small spinner, but we don't have to blur the user interactions for the whole time the operation takes place. We can defer the transaction to be done in the background, and the users, as I mentioned already, can still use the application.
Yeah, so that's what your user actually, I think, care about. Yeah, they care about clicking purchase button and seeing that it actually went to the cart, and it's sufficient. You, for example, use a confirmation that the item is in the stock, so that you see an interaction like almost immediately, and all the back office operations can happen in the meantime, and that's what we did here. So I think now here the majority of the increase was actually to just thinking about smart what matters to the user.
Yeah, all in all, it's all about the users in the application, right? So that's important as well. And yeah, finally, last but not least, we had a long startup time that we decreased twice-fold. So dropping from 23 seconds to 12, it was a very nice result, especially for quite large application with a quite large and complicated application. So yet again, good score from at this point. And lastly, application size. This was a huge win from us. So 10 megabytes is a very nice score. We have to remember that not all users are iPhone users with a 5G or Wi-Fi connection with them. Some users use older devices. There are elderly people, disabled people, all those groups that we have to think about as well. And they do not necessarily have super fancy devices with a fast network, right? So here we go here.
Okay, so now what was the impact on the actual business? So we managed to get back in the following month from the average rating of 4.5 and conversion rate on new clients increased by 22% compared to the period of before we started an optimization. And what I mentioned before, the churn rate, that was one of the clients' issues, already decreased quite fast after introducing those improvements. And I really do believe that this prepared the ground for onward product expansion. So I'm really glad that we could actually contribute to that.
Okay, thank you guys for the real app case study for e-commerce application. Now we will go to our fourth section, and I encourage everyone again to go to the slido.com to ask the questions. And the fourth section will be Eduardo talking about the performance audit report. Yeah, Eduardo, take it away.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Our audit report is designed to provide great value and actionable solutions to optimize your apps and performance. And to achieve this, we employ a data-driven approach that enables us to identify the root causes of any problem that your app may be experiencing. We use the 3 key metrics, but depending on the case, we use more metrics, right? And the thematic methodology for analyzing your app, features, or your components. Thematic help us to ensure that the report is well organized and easy to read. Within each metric section, you will find 3 main areas: analysis, suggestion, and expected results, expected outcomes, same. And these sections are intended to provide you with a clear understanding of the issues and the goal of the process. By implementing our suggestions, you can expect to see improvements in your app performance, meaning that our report is not only informative, but also actionable. In many cases, we provide you with steps that you can take to apply those changes. As a quick example, like you are showing now, we have a detailed screen show us, our analysis show us an extra renders triggered by some hooks. So we suggest to remove some dependency between them, and also unify others so we can just return a simple response from that hook. And among other improvements, it results in a decrease of the render time by around 40%. That is a big win. Well, finally, you will see at the end our key takeaway sections that provides a concise summary of the critical issues that we identify and we strongly recommend addressing. This section is really valuable as it highlights the most important areas where you can expect to see significant benefits from implementing the suggested changes. So our audit report is an essential tool for any business that wants to ensure that their app is performing at its best.
Okay, so if you are interested in performance audit, I think, Krzysztof, you have something to say here. What should people do if they want us to do the performance audit?
Yeah, so if you are trying to improve your app as far as performance goes and you are struggling to even start with that, that's exactly where performance audit comes in handy. So usually we're providing that as a part of a custom-made solution to our customers, as you could see in the example. So the first thing we did was the audit, exactly as the one that Edu showed you a moment ago. And right now, I'm really happy to announce that we kind of productize this service. And we are, as of today, we are launching a landing page where you can just like simply sign up for an audit. We also prepare the whole process of auditing the apps on our site in order to be really faster than ever to you. So if you would like to get one, then you either simply scan the code in here or look out for email, most likely tomorrow, with a link to this landing page. And what you'll get is this audit report, as you seen, consisting of first initial measurements of your product performance, then analysis of what contributes to the current performance, our recommendation on how to take it to the next level, and possible impact that you can achieve implementing those solutions. All of that bottom line with most impactful areas, the major ones that you might want to take care of in the first place. And once we do the audit, once you get it, we do a presentation to your team, host a Q&A session so that you are all good to take it forward. And just to maybe quickly go through how to actually book your audit, simply go to our landing page, sign up with a link in there for a quick discovery session. We then identify what are your needs. We work out paperwork until you get your quote. We audit your product, which usually takes like 2 to 4 weeks. You get the report and you get the presenting session and Q&A. So the number of slots that we predicted for this limited, and if you ever consider this audit, just sign up. The first apply, first serve rule applies, and we'll be pleased to help you with improving your app, your performance, and eventually your business.
Thank you, Krzysztof, for taking us through the performance audit and the performance audits offering of Callstack. Thank you, Edu, for also giving us a walkthrough through performance audit. I forgot to mention, but Edu is actually our performance expert, and he worked on the ultimate guide to React Native optimization, and he is one of the people who would actually do the performance audit if you sign up for it. So back to the agenda, we are done with our key sections, and there is a Q&A left. So I'm gonna stick on that slide for half a minute. You can go to the QR code, go to slido.com, enter the code, and ask the question there. I can see some questions there already, so I will go to those questions soon, and we will try to answer as many as we can in the remaining time. So our head of business development, Krzysztof Pawlak, Adam, performance developer, Edu, performance developer, and me will try to get as much context for you and for your questions as possible. So last chance to scan the QR code, but if you want to go to the slido.com, I think the information is in the chat as well. So let's get on with it. And I can see that my question has the most upvotes. So yeah, thank you for that. And let's skip that. Like the test question, hard to answer this, but thank you so much for upvoting. So the next question with 8 upvotes from Anonymous: is the new architecture worth migrating to, or is it still premature? And does it really enhance the app performance? So Adam, Edu, if you want to take this.
Yeah, I can go on ahead. So we had already this discussion at Callstack as well, because all the customers are actually asking us this question from time to time. And I think the answer is not yet, but, and this is like a big but, it's definitely worth upgrading to at least to newest React Native, right? So it's always good to be up to date with the newest React Native release. You get all the goodies, the CLI update, the support for a new architecture is already simple there. So you can opt into the new architecture. To answer like broadly, you can opt into the new architecture in your application, but you have all the libraries that you are using still have to support it, right? So it's not that simple yet. But we as a Callstack and React Native community as a whole are working on it, so it should be super simple in the future.
Yeah, so it's like case by case question, and if your app does not use a lot of external dependencies, and you can look, I think we can link it in the email that goes after this meeting. If you look at the master list of maintained library of the most popular libraries, there is a list of which ones of them support the new architecture. So you can calculate on your own for your application if this is a good step for you or not. Next question. Again, from Anonymous. This person asks a lot of questions here. What is the best way to monitor real usage, traffic, and real user performance? I feel Google Analytics gives more synthetic data. Edu, maybe you can take this. I know that you have a take on it.
Yeah, I can think like a couple of cases, but real users' performance is kind of hard to measure because of the wide range of devices, and also it will depend on how they use it, if they are running on fast internet, if they have open like many apps in background, if they are having, I don't know, now you can have picture in picture, so you are running the app. So the best way, I think that someone can try to emulate the real usage is just using it, basically you using it in a low-end device. We prefer to use Android devices because we think that Android devices is the operating system doesn't fit exactly with the hardware, so as iOS does. So that means that when you run the app on an Android device, you can get like if you run the app on an Android device and you get like a good metrics from your app, is for sure that the rest from that low-end device and the app, you will get like good performance. The best thing you can do instead of trying to measure your users is measure your code, like doing like CI/CD tools. Like if you use any of the repack, what's called repack?
Reassure.
Reassure, that one. Yeah, sorry. If you use Reassure with the CI tool, you can make sure that you don't make your features bad. You can keep up to date, and that will be the best way to also keep the performance. But real is kind of hard.
Yeah, I think what Edu mentioned is like moving the testing to the left, more to the development side. The question is about real usage, but I think it's important that we take the temperature of different phases in development. And if we, for example, use Reassure or some closer to development tools, we can have the faster feedback loop and we can iterate faster. But also if we connect some like Google Analytics mentioned here, or Firebase Analytics, or other tools like that, we can also measure what is the funnels on different screens, what is the performance of different screens. So I think it's quite important to have the whole spectrum covered and measure in development time and also measure at real user time. I think that's and for the best way to monitor, you could probably try few different tools and see which one fits your user base the best or your app the best. I don't think there is one best tool. It's always relative.
Yeah, and if I can add something is there's also a thing that our customer that we mentioned already that we talked about, focused, is like real users. So you can always ask users. You can read the reviews on a different stores. You can read opinions. If your app is popular, probably there are opinions on the web as well, like on a Reddit or whatever. So this is a good indicator as well if your app is good or bad or somewhere in the middle.
Yeah,
That's
definitely.
Yeah, that's what I also wanted to mention, that as long as it might sometimes sound crazy, it's good, for example, to take real feedback from actual users. For example, invite them to participate in either an interview or a survey, and it will help you to diagnose your app pain points that you should probably focus on first. And speaking from experience of working with our clients, I know they gather most valuable feedback about whether the app is actual issue for the users from this kind of either surveys or just actually talking to the user.
Well, if there is a negative opinion on Reddit, or is there when there is a negative opinion on Google Play Store, Apple App Store, like this opinion matters because someone cared enough to write it down, to spend some time to write up this opinion, and it influences other users, new users maybe. So you have to focus on the the loudest voices in the audience. I think like you have to take them into the account. I feel like we have exhausted the question from development to tools to monitor to reviews. Let's move on. I think one question got at the top of the list, maybe not at the top, but at the top. Yeah. So Flash List doesn't support RTL. Is there any alternative? So that caught me by surprise because
Yeah,
I didn't know that
didn't
it
knew
doesn't support.
So if it doesn't, nobody else does. So we can go back to like core React Native solutions. So section list or a list view. So either like both are implementing virtualized list, and actually they are not bad. They are quite good. So they should be enough in a lot of cases. I think.
What I can say is the flat list that exists in React Native is an evolution of a list view that existed in React Native 3 years ago or something like that. And Flash List, on the other hand, is open source. So if it doesn't support the RTL, it will very soon. Like if it's not us doing this, if it's not the Flash List like main contributors, someone else will try to use the Flash List, will want to use the optimization that it provides, and will write the support for RTL. So I don't think it's too long until we see it. Okay, now question from a real person. Thank you, Oliver, for writing your name. I have a screen that needs to fetch a big amount of data when opening, and then renders a complex UI displaying that. What is the best way to handle this? Probably not one way.
Yeah, that will depend on how do you want to show the data. Even if it is big, probably you can paginate it and start loading pieces of UI. For example, if it is a list, you can start displaying just the main content and you keep fetching and you are displaying part of the main content. It depends also how complex is the UI. So
yeah, I think this is mentioned also. This was mentioned by Adam previously, that maybe like implementing if GraphQL is a way, if it's a possibility for you, you can try to make your backend GraphQL, and then you can fetch different endpoints separately. You don't have to do one big fetch at the start of your application. You can divide and conquer, and you can load only what's necessary in inappropriate components, for example. And like Edu said, load the screen first, load the initial most important elements first, and maybe do a skeleton for the ones that you can defer for some later time. There is not one approach. In order to verify this, we would have to investigate and figure out the approach. There is not one approach to rule them all. It's it always depends on the case. Adam, do you want to add something?
Not really. I would say that you exhausted the answer. What I would maybe ask is, do you really need to have to fetch the large amount of data? Actually, what do you mean? Is large amount for you is like a JSON with the 40K lines, large or small? So there are a lot of questions that you have to like answer. First, do you need it? Like then, what are you using it for? Is this complex screen is a complex list or a complex animation or a complex, I don't know, game? We know that React Native doesn't like go well with the games, let's say. So this is kind of a generic question, but mostly that what guys already said, like think about the network layer, the state management, what we talked about, then think about like deferring and splitting the responsibilities over there. So divide and conquer as well comes into mind. All those things.
Okay. Going back to the anonymous, how you achieved 400% drop regard the upsize with repack? Also, upsize matters in terms of memory.
Okay, so what I mentioned already was to like investigate what are we packing with the bundle. So first, I already talked about the translations. We had these huge JSON files with the translations and with the different languages that were unnecessary. So this reduced bundle size significantly. Then yeah, we can use repack. We can use mini apps approach, and then the initial weight, the initial size of the application is quite small. And then whenever users goes to, I don't know, shopping module, we can like fetch all the data, all the components that are responsible for the shopping modules, and the app will work nicely. And if their users don't need this module, they won't never see it, and they will not ever fetch it, right? And answering the second part of the question, those upsize matters in terms of memory. I don't think so. This is like the initial stuff, like whenever you download the application. But believe me, users tend to look at the size of the applications very often, right? It's like more probable. It's more probable that the users will download your app if this size is 10 megabytes compared to, I don't know, 200 megabytes, right?
Yeah.
I think it also matters what industry you're operating in and what is your product for. If you're developing a product which is more likely to be used on the go, then and for example downloaded like when being abroad, it matters like 10 times more than for the users for the products where you actually have the app downloaded forever. So
Edu, you wanted to say something to this?
Yeah, so if you dig deeper into the bundle, in the bundle size, you can probably start tracking dependencies that are duplicated because of some library use a different version that you are trying to install, or different libraries conflict with those versions. So you can start like dig into that and start reducing those dependency duplicate versions, and you can like remove a lot of code, and that will reduce also the bundle size.
Yeah, I think that's a very nice developer trick here to fix the versions. I want to touch on the last part of this question because I think I have a good take on it. Also, upsize matters in terms of memory. So Adam said, no, it doesn't in terms of memory, but that got me thinking to the CPU usage. And upsize, the JS bundle size actually translates into the app start time, because the JS bundle has to be parsed and like be prepared to use. So I was working on some project with like load devices all over the user base, and that actually mattered a lot. The JS bundle size was actually had a real impact on application start time. So you have to be aware also of that, that the bigger your app size, the bigger your bundle size is, the bigger the app start time will be. Okay. Another question from Anonymous. And sorry, I will take a break here. Thank you so much for voting. Like, we have a lot of votes on these questions and we have a lot of questions. So I'm glad that we see that. Let's move on. What are the things to avoid when organizing navigation stacks to maximize performance? That depends. That probably depends. Like, I wouldn't start from optimizing right at the beginning. Like, try to architecture your app in a way that reflects the requirement, and then check if it performs well, because most probably it will. Like, we don't have to start with some elaborate tricks in terms of navigation. It only matters at some stage when you have more screens, when you have more nested navigators. I don't think we can answer that question like without any data.
I can add something like a tip, probably, that is also in the React Native side, React navigation side, that is good to keep as flat as possible the navigation.
Yeah.
Don't start like nesting navigators inside of a tab navigator, inside a stack navigator. You can start like flattering using groups and trying to flat as much as it can, because then you will run into issues trying to navigate, because we'll start bubbling all between, if you want to navigate to a screen, bubbling all the naming of the navigators, trying to pass data, a bunch of issues later if you start doing that.
Yeah, good tip. Thank you. Yeah, I forgot about that. Like, try to keep your application as simple as possible, if possible, right? Yeah, okay. I like your key metrics, but how to measure the starting point of those properly, especially FPS, TTI, startup time, etc.
Okay, so that's probably for me, since I talked about it during our presentation. So annually, most of the time, I would say. So for example, TTI, a very true, a very like simple solution is to have your phone, kill the application, open it again, record these sessions a couple of times, as I don't know, 20, 50. And then you can have like quite good metrics with a stopwatch. So this like simple, almost barbaric solution, but it's still like viable to go with. As far as it goes to other metrics, there are tools like there are like Android. It's for macOS you have Xcode instruments that you can go and do all kind of profiling over there. Android Studio have a profiler on their own, so that's a good case. On my daily work, so like even today and yesterday, I was using a Flipper, and it has a very nice plugin called React Profile Performance plugin. So you can go over there. You can have like average score. So it's something like Lighthouse score on a web. It can measure FPS like UI FPS, JS FPS, thread log, etc. It can give you a score. Yet again, think about like repeating those measurements like 10, 20 times just to have an average and get rid of the aberrations. So that's that. There's also our own custom-based solution called Reassure. So you can hook up the Reassure, write some testing scenarios that will measure the startup, the render time, and the render count of a given screen. You can read about it more on our blog as well. How to write the scenarios, how to hook it up with the continuous integration and with the, I don't know, each merge request that you do on your pipeline.
And the best resource to get that answer and a lot more context would be to download the Ultimate Guide to React Native Optimization, which Edu here is actually co-authoring, and he wrote a section about profiling. So using profilers, you can also get some of the metrics.
Also, if you let me add,
sure.
Remember that the devices, if you go, for example, Android, you enable the developer mode, you can get a lot of options that will let you to measure like refresh time. If you start scrolling, which part of the screen get refreshed, or even, I don't know, if I could just break out a little bit. I mentioned the developer mode in your phone you can enable, and you will see like a small chart at the top that will tell you all the frame per seconds, all the JS code, and how it's behaving your app. So you don't always need like your computer. You can use your mobile to get some data also.
Okay, great answers. We are getting close to 1 hour of this webinar, but I did start 3 minutes later. So let's have another 5 minutes of answering the questions, and let's answer some more, maybe 2, maybe 3, and we will finish at 5 past. What do you think? Okay, what can you say? I'm leading this meeting.
Yeah.
You have no power. Okay. Next question, and this was upvoted just now. So be aware that the meeting is getting to its end. So if you want us to answer your questions, please upvote it. And the recently upvoted question is performance audit free?
So as I mentioned to you, it was part of our custom solutions that we delivered to our commercial clients, and it's not for free, it's paid. And you'll get your quote after signing up and after our discovery call, when we learn what are your challenges, what is your app size, how comprehensive is your case. Then we quickly go back to you and tell you what would be the cost.
Yeah, and I think it's important to mention that previously it wasn't available on its own. It was a part of like performance optimization package and not performance audit only. So that's why we are speaking about it, because it's new and you can get only this part without the further optimization. You get a blueprint of how to do them yourselves, for example. Yeah, so does FlashList has a section list implementation?
Yes.
Okay, let's move on.
There is a guide on a FlashList website how to do it. The data structure is kind of different that you would expect, and from one you used when using the section list from a React Native, but it's doable to have different layers. So you can have like a section list. You can have something called masonry layout as well. So it's kind of nice.
Okay, next question. I would like to, Jonathan, thank you for writing your name. I would like to improve the caching performance in my app. Is it better to cache the actions that lead to network request or the response data instead? You should use the standard solution, like caching solutions like Callstack query, previously React query. You should, most often than not, you should not start re-implementing industry standards. You should use open source libraries, and you should contribute to them if you think you can do something better, but like more often than not, most often those solutions will have a lot of people contributing to them, and your case won't need a custom solution. So if you want to use caching in your application, you could probably use Callstack query. Adam, is that right?
Yeah, I'm using like intensively the Callstack query in a current project. I used it before as well. It has a very nice caching mechanism, but if you, for example, have to have fresh data all the time, you can use refetch interval for that as well. You can have like custom stale data that you can set a time that the data will be stale and have to be refetched. You can use different options to like suit your needs, I would say. So so catch the data if with a sense, with a like a good sense, obviously, right? So what I mean is that you don't have to or even shouldn't cache the data for an hour, right? But whenever user goes from a background to the foreground with the application, you can refresh the data to have a fresh batch. But you don't have to like fetch the same data at each visit on a given screen, I would say as well. So
Yeah.
it's yet again common sense, because in React Native you don't always have like a super solutions that you can write down and check in and tick box and say that your app is good. You always have to think about the given case that you have, the given scenario.
Yeah, thank you for context to that answer. One more minute and one more question, and this one just got upvoted. Lately, I'm hearing companies migrating away from React Native to KMM or pure native. Hopefully, this session will boost my learning and improve my skills. I hope so. Yes. One thing that I can say here is that React Native will never be more performant than native because we rely on underlying platform, but we can get you very, very close to real native performance. So I think it's 5 past, and this is a good note to end on. Yes, I would like to thank everyone. And let me start with our participants here. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Krzysztof. And thank you, Edu, for taking the time
you.
to talk about the performance of our application. I'd like to thank Marta, who is organizing this event behind the scenes and helping us gather the questions and moderating in the chat. And thank you all participants for joining us today, for taking the time to learn. And hopefully you will join us for one of our next webinars. Thank you so much. Have a great day wherever you are. Bye.